Today at 3 a.m., somehow my brain convinced me that Sunday had already passed and that I was going to get up to go to work this morning. I was so convinced of this that I started getting even more depressed about having to go to work and what that meant. Waiting 5 long days before you got 1 day off again. And it becomes a nightmare when even your brain doesn't understand that it's your off time. Your brain is so hardwired to understand that all you do is suffer every single day. Last night, that suffering was on full display. If you've never thought about it this way, imagine your brain is just the static we used to see on TV. And every once in a while, images pop into the static. Images of you, sometimes people you've never met, but mainly it's just you and the static. And last night, I didn't know what to think about. There wasn't anything to think about. There isn't any happiness anymore. There isn't enough resources to be happy. All there is you watching the images change inside of your mind and knowing full well that there's nothing good out there. There's nothing to do. You're bored out of your mind. You're bored at work. You're bored at home. You're even bored while you're sitting there on the toilet making some browns. It's like the constant annoyance of being alive when there's absolutely nothing to look forward to. You're never going to own a home and you're never going to have a good job. All you're going to do is suffer for an eternity. And the more the images changed inside of my head, every time I fell a little asleep and I saw something in a dreaming state, I didn't like it. So just like an idiot, you're just changing the channels inside your head all night trying to find something that's bearable. Unfortunately, your brain doesn't even know what to do. It can't create a place for you to go to inside your dreams if you've never been there. If you've never had anything that's worth having. Nothing that I have in my life right now is worth having. If you were to look in my apartment right now, you could just see very basic home. I don't even know what to call it. This is like a dungeon plus. That's it. That's my life. There may not be bars on the outside of my windows, but they're there. I can feel them because they're heavy. And tomorrow when they open the door to cell block B and they let me out for the work release program, I'm going to go out to the world. And like most of you, and those of you who are working today, like Crickety Crickets or Jennifer C., they understand that the prison doors are 24/7 because they live it. They have a regular job and they have another job and they probably have a third job. Why? Because that's what they need to do in order to stay alive. Nothing but work, nothing in their personal lives to look forward to. I haven't heard from Esther in a while, but I'm sure she's in the same boat. Probably even been laid off from her fourth job already this year. But that's just the way things go. You ever sit there after work, brain fried, scrolling through your phone like you're looking for a reason to keep existing? That's what poverty does. It turns your thoughts into static and your dreams into commercials you can't afford to watch. Capitalism calls it motivation, but really, it's just exhaustion with better branding. Every day feels like a rerun of Survive or Die, trying, and somehow the paycheck still can't cover the basic subscription service for life. That is so true. The basic subscription. You're talking food and shelter. It's not possible. And the reason for that is because they make it impossible. Things don't have to be this way. But your suffering turns into productivity for them. They need your tears. They need your pain. They need you to keep coming back to a job that was never designed for a person like you. Most jobs in this country were designed for 12-year-olds who are going to live at home for the rest of their lives. The paycheck, along with a Happy Meal at the end of the week as the only motivating force to keep you going. And it's not as if we hadn't noticed. We've all noticed that our lives have become more miserable year after year since the bug. When I was a kid, we used to go on vacations. I never saw my parents suffer the way that I see poor people suffering today. Then the suffering's everywhere. Just look at your neighbors. Look at the people working in retail. Look at the people who are working even at that fancy resort place I was at last week. The employees can't afford to be there other than as slave labor. And that was very evident among the food people, the people who brought out the feast for the people, or I guess the more important people. And it was an ugly scene to see people like that. Servitude in that way is one of the nastiest things that you can possibly imagine. It's like building the pyramids. You know that you're never going to see the end result, but every day you come and you bust your hump in order to build a pyramid. But as I've said before, I saw this bumper sticker maybe a couple years ago on the back of a construction worker's truck, and it read, I don't want to be part of a city that I can't afford to live in, or maybe build a city that I can't afford to live in. And that's the current society that the proletariat is building. We're the mechanism of production, but we can't afford to live there. And it's intentional. That's why they have gated communities so that you know you're not welcome there. Yesterday, when I was driving back from the Chandler Mall, I passed so many gated communities, and I thought to myself, why? Why do you need a 50-foot gate to keep people like me out of your neighborhood? I would never qualify for a home in that neighborhood. Hell, most people can't qualify for an apartment in this apartment complex. Remember, you've got to be making around $8,000 right now in order to qualify for your basic apartment. Because most apartments want you making 3 to 4 times what the rent is. Minimum 3.5. That's a lot of money. When the average person is probably pulling down $500 to $600 per week. It's not realistic. Nothing is realistic in this world. Poverty doesn't murk you fast. It takes your curiosity first. It takes your imagination, your peace, your sleep, and replaces them with price tags. You stop asking, how do I want to be? And start asking, what can I afford to lose this month? That's a question that many people ask themselves on a regular basis. What can I afford to lose this month? And for most people in America, I'm going to say it's your shelter. People are losing their homes because they can't afford to pay their mortgages, and they're losing their cars. In fact, true story. I was leaving the gym the other day. It was early in the morning. I think I had just taken a shower at the gym because no running water. And I'm walking out to the parking lot, and I see this blue electric Mustang that's always parked near the entrance. And there's the repo man with a big smile on his face, just taking it away. And you think to yourself, that's pretty much what this entire country is doing to everyone. It's taking everything away. So what can you afford to lose this month? The 3 basics: food, shelter, and work stability. There's nothing out there that guarantees you're going to have a job tomorrow. In fact, I've seen so many people lose their jobs in the past few years that I wonder who's going to be left. Because I was talking to a bigwig at work last week, and he says to me, MillennialSteam, every time they can someone, in order to find another person, it costs the corporation $5,000 to $10,000 just in costs to find another person that's probably going to turn over just as fast. Sales is probably one of the toughest places to make money right now. And it is the bread and butter of any business is to be able to market and sell your product. But those people don't last. They come and they go. They burn out quick, not making your quotas, or you just want to live. You just want to be able to say, I don't want to work when you don't want to work. And the last thing a low level job wants is people that feel like they have flexibility. That's one of the hardest things about being poor. There is absolutely no flexibility, especially when it comes to working in retail. One week they need a lot of people, the next week you get 19 hours, the following week you might not get any hours, or you're opening and closing, or your boss just doesn't think that you're worth anything and finds a way. When I worked at Walmart, it was very easy to see who the people that weren't going to be there weren't were there were certain patterns of behavior from management towards those people. That's why I made it. I was the only person left at 2.5 years that was still desperate enough to keep coming back. I wasn't the greatest worker in the world, but sometimes good enough for a job that was never intended to be long term. But sometimes you just need money. It's like working in the deli. I've said that 100 times. Working in the deli at any grocery store is a job for single moms because they're the only ones who will put up with that kind of filth and low pay. They say poor people are lazy, but no one works harder than someone trying to survive on nothing. The system loves that lie because it keeps you grinding for scraps, while billionaires call it motivation. We're not lazy, we're just tired of building pyramids for people who already live on top. It's funny how that analogy came up yet again. And building. Because without productivity, because who is productivity in this world? It's the people who can't afford anything. The people who have to blindly go into jobs they dislike in factories or farms or construction. The jobs that are hard yet pay literally nothing. I know this because both my parents were laborers. My mom cleaned houses. My dad did construction. That's what they did their whole lives. They worked really hard. They always came home dirty. And that's something I've never had to do. I've never had to come home like dirty from work. And that's, I think, a sign of the times is that more and more people don't want to do the jobs that are hard. No one really wants to go into the trades because, and this is something the trades never say, the dirtier the job, the more likely it is to harm your long-term wellness, especially, and this is the number one thing I've heard, when you become a welder, you're inhaling those fumes from welding all day long. Do you think that's good for you? Imagine the same thing for a plumber or a carpenter. The trades are for people who need jobs that either don't have access to better education or for people who simply do not have good enough luck in order to get a decent job. Because there are very limited amounts of decent jobs and plenty of crap jobs in this world. And not every crap job involves digging holes. You can be stuck in the mailroom at any corporation for the rest of your career. Because most of us don't stand out in any conceivable way. We're not tall, we're not attractive, we're too short, we're too dark. Whatever happens to be your poisons. For the most part, the proletariat isn't something that someone's going to pick out of a lineup and say, I'm going to give opportunity to this one. No, as I mentioned in my last video, usually the people that get picked out for good positions in our society are because they're in a place where they can be seen. Which reminds me of that secretary that I talked to 6 months ago, who said that she isn't seen because her position is so low. Basically, you're a coffee pot inside of Pound Town. People walk by you, they use you, they tip you over, and then you're empty at the end of the day. Then you go home. That's your function in a society like ours, where nearly all poor people are completely invisible. I know that yesterday they did the marches, but one of the first things I saw when I turned on my computer in the morning or scrolled through my phone in the morning was a news article on the Huffington Post that said, do not post your videos from any of these things because they may use them with facial recognition software to find you for showing up to one of those things. That is one of the most ominous things I've ever read online. Don't go to the rally and show your face on social media because now you could be treated like a criminal. Every person that showed up at a rally yesterday, in the eyes of this administration, is a criminal. Because I don't know how this happened, but whenever poor people get mad about something, they're suddenly against the system. And it's a sad way of looking at things because what we really want is to create a world where we don't want to be rich, but we want to have enough. And that's what those people were there for. They were nonviolent. They were there saying, we want more. Everyone says money can't buy happiness, but have you ever tried being depressed in a heated apartment? Poverty doesn't just make you sad. It industrializes your sadness. It turns your emotions into unpaid labor for a system that feeds on your exhaustion and calls it the American dream. What have I been saying about the American dream for years? It was never a dream. It was a raffle ticket that they hand you after you get out of college and say, here you go. Here's the potential for you to someday get a good job, but more than likely, this ticket is going to be a loser. Because the people that are going to thrive in life were destined to thrive. Maybe there'll be 1 or 2 lottery winners a year, but for the rest of us, we're holding a raffle ticket in the wind. And it's best just to let it go and let life happen. You know how life happens. It happens hard, it happens fast, and it's never easy. You just sit there and you scratch your head and you wonder, how did they even take away that? Yes, you know what I'm talking about. The corn hub, at least here in Arizona, is no more. They decided that they weren't going to be here in this state. I started going to other sites yesterday, and they had all these little locks on the videos. And you're like, I've never seen this before. Yep. Even shaking hands with the governor has been taken away to an extent. They want you to be as miserable as humanly possible. When they take away your shakes, your morning shakes with the governor, when they offer you a paycheck so small you have to get a magnifying glass to look at it, and you wonder how the Mick life has been normalized. Because remember, that's what they've been trying to do for years. Normalize your poverty and tell you, well, if you had just done this, this, and this, maybe you wouldn't be down there in the gutter right now where you are. Maybe you'd be a winner. But that's not realistic. Normalizing poverty makes you not care. Makes it so that you look at it and think, well, if I'm poor, then everyone else is poor. Normalize it. Normalize that crap job that you have to go to. Normalize the NPCs that you barely interact with. I mean, I don't think I talked to a single person yesterday other than that salesperson at the Apple store. I did not have a single conversation with another human being yesterday. Not one phone call, not one text message, not one email. That's not life, people. And I'm seeing that as being pushed down your throat as normal. The NPC life. You're not a playable character. You're not even a background character. You're just static out there in the world that has no purpose or meaning. At some point, you stop even wanting luxury. You just want silence. You want a day where your brain doesn't feel like a radio stuck between stations, pushing out static about rent and groceries. That's the real poverty, when peace costs more than anything money could buy you. So yeah, maybe we're all just tuning into the same broken frequency, waiting for the signal to come back. But until then, keep listening. The noise is proof you're still alive. The noise is all we have. What do we have to think about at night anymore? I spent 3 hours tossing and turning and closing my eyes and seeing a vision of the world that I didn't want to be a part of. You close your eyes, you open your eyes, and it's still the same crappy world. There's nothing that can be changed about that because the system doesn't want it to change. And if the system likes the way things are, then the system has already won.